All right, with number 31, we're still being asked to determine whether the relation is a function and give the domain and range. All right, so that first part, definitely the easiest part, right? We're just dropping a vertical line through our graph here and seeing how many places it touches. And I see 1, and I see 2, so we can say definitively that, excuse me, that this is not a function. All right, and now let's talk about domain and let's talk about the range here. All right, so again, we know that range and domain refers to the x values. And let's see, what are the possible x values of this graph? Well, I see that this graph will never go past the blue line here on the left, and it will never go past the blue line here on the right. And this line here is, we can pretend is a vertical line, can't we? Going through x equals -6. And we can pretend that this is a vertical line and this is going through 1, 2, x equals 2. So the possible x values are between -6 and 2. And so for our domain, we're going to use brackets because we're talking about real numbers here. -6 is a real number. -6. And as we read from left to right or go from smallest to greatest, we start at -6, head to the right, and stop at +2. And we use a bracket because 2 is a real number. And there we have our domain. All right, so we're going to do something similar for our range. Let's see here. We're talking about our y values now. And we always read from smallest to greatest, right? So it looks like this blue line here is y equals -1, and here we have y equals +3, 1, 2, 3. All right, so if we're talking about the range, well, again, we start with the smallest, and we start at -1, and as we read up, or going from smallest to greatest, we go from -1 up to 3, and we're using brackets here because we're dealing with real numbers, right? And so there we have it. Not a function. Our domain is -6 to 2, and our range is -1 to 3. All right, so let's take a look at 32 and see what we have here. All right, we're going to use that vertical line test. We can drop a couple just to be sure. And every time we drop that vertical line, I can see that it only touches in one place. So we definitely have ourselves a function. And now we're going to talk about domain and range. So we can go ahead and get rid of that vertical line test. All right, so for x values for domain, again, let's pretend that there are arrows here and that this graph goes up in the up direction forever. Well, if we pretend that each of these is a handle and we grab onto it and pull each side of this graph down towards the x-axis, we're going to have ourselves a horizontal line. And towards the left, this horizontal line is heading out towards -infinity, and as it heads off towards the right, it's heading towards +infinity, and so that becomes our domain, -infinity to +infinity. All right, how about range? Well, we're going to do something similar to what we used in the previous question, number 31. So we're talking about y values now, and we can pretend that there is a line, there's a brick wall here, that this graph is never going to have a y value smaller than y equals 2. So y equals 2 is the absolute smallest y value that this graph is going to have, and as the parabola extends upwards, those y values are getting larger, aren't they? So here, on our parabola, we're at 5, but as we go up a little farther, now we're at 10. If we went up a little further, we would be at 15. So we're from 2 to +infinity, right? Because as we go up, we're heading towards +infinity. And with -infinity and +infinity, we always use the parentheses.